This next pattern copies the March Brown. Now, I know we have no longer got March Browns in Yorkshire waters. It is in fact quite a rare beast. It's only found on a few river systems. But don't let that put you off. This pattern is a tremendous fish fooler. It catches fish that are feeding on other big brown duns such as brook dun and the false March Brown. So it's definitely worth an addition to your fly box. And if you don't want to tie a dozen, tie half a dozen just for these occasions when the big brown duns are on the water. Now, most March Brown patterns use partridge in some part of the dressing. In fact, usually it's a wing of partridge tail fibres and a hackle of partridge back feather. The one I'm doing doesn't use partridge at all. It uses the much more unusual feather from the snipe's rump. And I think it's a nicer feather than a mottled partridge feather. It's much more subtle. I'll read the dressing out. The hook is 2 or 3, which equates to a 13 or a 12. We don't have odd numbers anymore. The wing is hackled with the mottled brown feather from a snipe's rump. Body is orange silk number 6A, dubbed with fur from the nape of a rabbit's neck, which has been lightly tinged red with Crawshaw's red spinner dye. We don't have Crawshaw's dyes anymore, so I use the Vineyard one. And ribbed with gold wire or tinsel. Tail, 2 strands from the feather of a snipe's rump, same feather as used for the wings. Head, orange silk. So that's the one we're going to do. So I'm doing it on a size 12. Remember, these are good large beasts. They're not small insects. Most people think that North Country spiders are tiny flies. Well, some are, and quite a few aren't. So first job, mash down the barb. Right, thread orange number 6A, pull off about a foot or so of thread and wax it. Okay, so that's me thread done. Now the feather is one of these little mottled feathers there. Look for one that's the right length and nip it out. Check the fibre length and that'll be about right. Now do the usual trick of just stroking back the fibres. There's no need to come right to the very tip. I'm going to enter the feather, the hackle and the thread at the same time. So just support with your thumb and catch down. And there's a fibre there got caught down, but I shan't get excited about that. In fact, I'll tie that in. And again, on this pattern, they don't talk about a best side or a dark side or a light side. So I'm tying it in so that the natural curvature of the feather will umbrella backwards. So just lift my waist up. Now the body is ribbed with fine gold wire, so take off a small amount of gold wire. I'm going to cut this with a very base of my scissors. And tie that in full body length so that I don't get any lumps and bumps. All the way down. You'd actually hold that rib like that and that will naturally slide your thread wraps down, stack them next to one another. It's a little fly tying trick of old, is that. And the tails, it's 2 fibres from the same feather as we're using for the hackle. So strip off the lower fluffy fibres and just tie in a couple of fibres. And if you've grabbed 3, I wouldn't really get into bed about it. Catch those in, and now remember to observe the body length ending halfway between barb and hook point. That's about right. And now the body is dubbed with this fur from the behind the ears of a rabbit. In Edmonds and Lee they use the terms dubbed with, or sparsely dubbed with, or very sparsely dubbed with. And he doesn't use the word sparse or sparingly in this one, he just says dubbed, so I'm assuming you can just apply the dubbing a little bit heavier. So there's a little wodgy dubbing. Just knock this on, spread it up the thread and just lightly tighten it in. Doesn't have to be too tightened in, and try to make the spindle taper in. Then starting right at the base of the tails, just come forward and make a nice dubbed body. You'll find 1 or 2 guard hairs spring out, that's fine. Any excess, just slough it off. And now you're ready to rib. Now I'm going to rib in the opposite direction. So I come through now. It doesn't say how many turns, so I'll give it about, well, I'll just tighten that one up a bit. The ribs are obviously meant to indicate abdomen segmentation. So I would say 7 or 8 ribs will be fine. That's 4, 5. Try to keep them even. 6, 7. And when you get to the back of the hackle where your thread's waiting, just tie off a few times and then fret off the waist. Don't cut it off, just fret it off. That will leave a little tang sticking up. And now you're ready to hackle. On with your pliers. Tying thread to the front and make your first turn. Keep the fibres at right angles, and when you get your first turn on, just start chevroning them back slightly. And this hackle folds, as they call it, or doubling, it folds beautifully. And I'm not counting the turns, I'm looking at the volume that I'm putting on, because different birds, the feathers have different characteristics, and so I'm just looking. I reckon that I haven't counted the number of hackle barbules that are sticking out, but I reckon that's about enough. And then just separate through with your thread and come through 3 or 4 times. I'll hold it and then take my blade, use the edge, just sever through, and now just come in with your 2-finger whip finish. And 3 or 4 wraps is sufficient. Hold together, pull through, pull, 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 nip, 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 and I've got it. Job's a good one. Take your scissors, almost no need to do any primping with my fingers. They've gone on just as I like them. So that's it. That's Edmonds and Lee's 6B March Brown Spider. And to finish, as usual, a little droplet of jungle juice. Gone. A good pattern, worth having. And when to use it? Well, the word March is a bit of a misnomer. Probably they did at one time emerge in March, but it should really be called these days the April brown, because early April is usually the time of year when these are on the water, the true March brown. Would I use it anywhere else in the world? Yes, I would. It'll certainly work in American waters where they have the red and grey fox. That's I believe it's a Stenonema species. It's a flat stone clinger, same as our big browns, and it'll work on their freestone streams. I'm 100% sure it will, and it'll work throughout Europe and Scandinavia just as well. So tie yourself some.